It's 1:30. I'd like to call the meeting of the Monday, July 21st, 2014 Traffic and Transportation Commission. Roll call. Commissioner Witcher.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Littlefield.
Here, sir.
Commissioner White. Commissioner Hale.
Here, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
Here.
Commissioner Jenkins. Commissioner George. Okay, we do have a quorum. I'd like to have a motion concerning the minutes of the June 16, 2014 meeting.
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Littlefield.
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Schuline. Any discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes from Commissioner Littlefield, seconded by Commissioner Schuline. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. The report on license, taxi, and record service.
Excuse me just a second. You've got some lights on that people that are not here.
White. If you could get that, please. Oh, thank you very much. Okay, are we ready, sir?
Good afternoon.
Let the record show that Ms. Jenkins has arrived.
I'll report before the Vehicle for Hire report, second quarter report, which includes April, May, and June of this year. For those months, for driver's permits for taxis and shuttles, we have 63 new permits, 86 renewals, 26 transfers, and 4 duplicates. As far as vehicle inspections are concerned, we have 339 new inspections, and that's passed, and 68 that failed. I will tell you that the high number of inspections this go around is because the annual inspections for this year, so that'll be for all the taxi companies getting their vehicles inspected. As far as the enforcements, we have 11 complaints, 8 investigations, and 4 field investigations and 3 citations. The 3 citations were merely for those taxi drivers operating with expired permits. Now, the higher number of complaints and investigations, the more significant ones that pretty much stand out will be 3 of them were from out at the airport. They sent them back. They had complaints about a couple of taxis that were missing hubcaps, decals, such things like that. Those vehicles were re-inspected and then put back into service. We also had 2 complaints about 2 different drivers texting and talking on the phone while they were carrying passengers. We contacted those companies because currently, unless those citizens sign a citation, there's nothing we can do about those. But we contacted those companies, and they do have a no cell phone policy while carrying passengers, so they're going to handle that internally. We also had 2 refusals of service by driver. It sounds probably more than what it is. So we had a complaint that one of the drivers dropped a lady off at Walmart and then came in demanding money from her while he was supposed to be outside waiting on his wait time. Turns out that was more of she was in there for like 30 minutes. He was wondering where she was, went in there to look for her, and he told me that because he's had passengers like that before who's left the store, I think, without paying him, so he just asked for his money then, and it was more of a disturbance between the 2. The second complaint on this driver was a relative of the first one, and there was a lot of discrepancies within that. I think it was more of a retaliation since we didn't necessarily get the driver fired or anything like that. He complained pretty much the same thing, that the driver dropped him off an employment agency, and then when he came back out, he demanded money before he went anywhere. I checked with that company, and their records actually show that, yes, he did take him and he did wait, but when he came back out, he only had a debit card. And for the return trip, he didn't have enough money for his debit card. And so that pretty much went unsustained as far as that's concerned. For limousines, driver's permits for this quarter, we had 22 new permits, 13 renewals, 1 transfer, and 0 duplicates. We also had 30 vehicles that passed inspections. This is not all the companies right now that has brought their vehicles for inspections. We're working with them to gain compliance with them. A couple of the companies, the Traffic Commission approved as new companies, and we have still yet to hear from them. So I'm not sure if they're going to be operating, not operating, because I haven't been able to contact them at all. But we're still working on getting in contact with them. As far as enforcement actions, we have 1 complaint and 2 investigations. The 1 complaint that we had was one of the limousine companies was, for lack of better words, accepting street hails at hotels. Customers were coming out, or hotel guests were coming out of the hotels. The limousine or executive car was sitting in the parking lot and being flagged down by either valets for the hotel or this valet service. We talked to all the hotels, which included the Skirvin, the Sheridan, and the Renaissance, their hotel management, and their understanding, they had no knowledge of the ordinances and how it was written, so they all had verbal agreements and told the limousine companies that was okay. We since worked that out, and they are all working on written contracts to resolve the problem. So they'll be being paid by the hotels instead of directly by the customers and being hailed. The other complaint or investigation that we have was, I'm not sure if you may remember, a couple of months back, one of the taxi companies, NASCAB, came to the Traffic Commission to have a NASCAB shuttle. The Commission did not approve him because of the color scheme and the name. That gentleman also has a limousine company, and he tried to get the exact same vehicle approved for inspection with the exact same colors and everything like that. Of course, we worked it out and worked with legal, and we came up with a definition because it was a minivan that he was trying to use. We got that problem resolved as far as not approving minivans to be operating as an executive car per se, and definitely that he would have to have the colors on the van changed if he wanted to operate it in any other capacity other than his taxi company. As far as the carriages are concerned, we had, for driver's permits, we had 7 new permits, 2 renewals. 22 carriages were inspected and passed, and 1 failed. I'm currently working, I guess, a complaint. I guess some of the carriage companies are having quite a time with each other as far as parking spaces or allowed spaces down in the Bricktown area, and it's coming to arguments with, because right now we have 7 carriage companies and a limited amount of spaces for those carriages to operate down in the Bricktown area, and so it's becoming quite a battle, especially when a couple of carriage companies have 2 and 3 carriages themselves, so it's been kind of some arguments and verbal disturbances between them, because when one pulls out, a company with 2 or 3 may move in, which basically shuts out the other company. But we're trying to work that out and possibly work with the Traffic Commission later on, trying to discuss it if it comes to that level, to see what we can do as far as remedying that solution, that problem. As far as enforcement actions, we have 0 for all the carriages. Those complaints came in this month, so they're not included for this quarter. On the pedicabs, we have 9 new driver's permits, 0 renewals, and 3 transfers. Their inspections, we had 22 that passed and 4 that failed, and 0 enforcement actions as far as any citations or complaints, investigations. That'll conclude the vehicle for hire report for the second quarter. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Does anybody have any questions here? The only question I have is on the taxis, the inspections, the 68 failed. Seems like a pretty large number. Could you give a summary of some categories of the failures, please?
The majority of them is, once again, like I said, because we had the annual inspection, they all came through. We had no mechanical failures or anything like that. There were more the missing hubcaps, tag lights out, headlights out, windshield wipers. Like I said, that's more of the design, or I would call them design failures, or maybe some interiors were dirty, but they have since been re-inspected, or the majority of them have been re-inspected and are now in service.
So it's just the smaller issues?
Smaller issues.
That required him to go back and fix it and come back and get
Absolutely,
re-inspected?
yes, sir.
So nothing major or anything that
Nothing major.
hurts anything? Okay. Very good. Anybody else have questions or comments? Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, item 4 is the consent docket. There are no items. Item 5A, Patricia Coach, President, Windsor Forest Neighborhood Association, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, to consider a request for the addition of north and southbound stop signs on North Purdue Avenue at Northwest 20th Street to establish always stop control. Somebody here to speak on it? Ma'am, if I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Patty Cook. My address is 5101 Northwest 20th Street, Oklahoma City, 73127. I'm here, as I said, as president of Windsor Forest, and I'm supposed to serve the residents that live within our boundaries and improve the quality and safety of the life in the neighborhood. And that is why we are asking, as a neighborhood association, to have 2 stop signs, one north, one south, on Purdue. I also want to say we are in the Hefner Division, and Sergeant Scala went with me to the apartment complexes to get the signatures from the managers, and they were all in favor. And I guess if you have all this information, you already know that it was almost 100% of people that want this. I also want to read 2 emails I received this morning. One was from Sergeant Scala. Good morning, Patty. Keep up the great work. I appreciate and value your leadership. The stop sign is definitely needed. Shall I repeat that? The stop sign is definitely needed. I know with your persistency it will be a success. I hope you're all hearing that. And Major Becker just wrote and said, best of luck, Patty. So I have all kinds of reasons, and I have all kinds of, not statistics, but that show. I know I was told that stop signs don't slow down traffic. I find that hard to believe because you usually have to slow before you stop. So yes, they do. In Moore, and I checked with Moore, and I checked with Yukon, they put stop signs out just for that reason, to slow traffic, because, like I said, if you're going to stop, you better slow up first. I parked my husband's pickup truck, I'm sure he would have been happy to know that, on Purdue, facing north, towards Northwest 23rd Street, to see if traffic would slow down. Lo and behold, they did, because they didn't want to hit my truck. So it does. I talked to the principal of Mayfield School, and I'm not sure if it shows on there or not. Mayfield is south of 16th on Purdue. They have this year an enrollment of 700 students. Now, I know all 700 of them don't walk Purdue, although sometimes I wonder. But we have, on 23rd Street, west of Purdue, we have, right on 23rd, we have, used to be 23rd Street Station. To the east of Purdue on 23rd Street, we have 7 or 8 more complexes. The only way these kids can get that way, because there's no other through street unless you go all the way to Ann Arbor, is to go up Purdue. So they're walking up and down Purdue. And it sounds like 23rd to 19th Street is not that far as blocks go, but we have extra streets in there. So it's 5 blocks, and I know none of you, when you were young, got in your cars and sped. I know you didn't do this, but some people do. They come they come off of 23rd on Purdue, and I want to tell you, they go fast. Both apartment complexes on east and west of Purdue there exit onto Purdue, and they come out of those apartments and they goose it. I mean, they down the street. We have a lot of walkers, we have bicyclists, young and old, and we also have the kids that come from Mayfield. I just think it's very, very important that we slow this traffic down. And I think stop signs there would do it. And I know that not every time, we don't always make I don't know, what is it, that MUCTD or whatever it is? That was in 2009 anyway. But anyway, I know that that isn't always correct. It'd be kind of like somebody saying, okay, all children, we just did 100 children, and all the children need to do this. Well, all children aren't going to be alike. All neighborhoods aren't alike. We know our neighborhood better than any of you. And we know what we need. We know what would be good. We know what would be safe for it. Let me see if I have any more notes before I let you go. Are my 5 minutes up?
No, ma'am, you're all set.
And I think, well, don't put us all in a box, because like I said, one size doesn't fit all. I believe, because I did some, I'm not sure what you call it, but anyway, I did some looking around, and I know that you don't always go by what it says on here that you're supposed to do or that you should do. Not too long ago, I believe at 11th and Walker, that wasn't approved, but I think they got their stop signs anyway, didn't they? So I'm hoping that even after you look at what the information said and what I've told you, you'll realize that we really, really, really need these stop signs. Are there any questions?
No, thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Does anybody else speak on this item?
When will I find out?
As soon as we're done with Ms. Chai, and then we're going to talk about it.
Okay.
So it'll be just a little bit, ma'am. Thank you. Ms. Chai, do you have staff input, please?
Yeah, well, you've got the complete staff report before you. As Ms. Cook alluded to, the city's got criteria related to the use of stop control in residential areas, and there's also criteria in the manual and uniform traffic control devices. Action on this item is going to be at the discretion of the commission. In residential areas, we try to apply stop control at intersections that are about even as far as traffic distribution goes. In this particular case, like over 80% of the traffic is carried on Purdue and less than 20 is carried on 20th Street. So I'll answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you very much. Do we have a motion concerning item 5A?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the request from Windsor Forest Neighborhood.
We have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Littlefield. Do we have any discussion on this item?
I'm for it.
Okay. Do we have any
I'm
discussion?
happy to speak up.
Okay.
It's one of those situations, I visited this area last night. It's one of those situations where it's the condition. It's a straight shot, the easy thing to speed on. There is a four-way stop that exists at 19th Street, if I'm looking at this correctly. So it wouldn't be out of uniform to have this happen here. And until there is another source that this commission can use as a tool to provide traffic calming for neighborhoods, a stop sign is the only thing. So to me, and given the neighborhood is in complete support of it, I'm definitely voting in approval.
Okay. Anybody else wish to talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5A from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Can I have your votes, please? Item is approved. Okay, we go on now to item 5B. Item 5B, Jim Yandel, 12100 Riverview Road, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73173, to consider a request for the addition of east and westbound stop signs on Southwest 119th Street at South Council Road in order to establish all-way stop. Do you have anybody here to speak on this item? Yes, sir. If I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Jim Yandel. I live at 12100 South Riverview Road. I've been a resident out there for 18 years. The proximity, we're about 3/4 of a mile west of 119th and Council Road. It's kind of hilly right there in that particular area. The speed limits are 45 miles an hour east and west, 45 north and south. We live in, this is kind of a semi-rural area out there. The problem is that at this intersection, I believe over the years, there's been several accidents out there. And one of the problems is, I think that on the northwest corner there, the elevation on that on that farm there's a farm there, and it looks to be, just eyeballing it, about 3 to 4 foot taller, the land or the dirt, and we have a lot of, we got Johnson grass out there probably 8 or 10 foot tall on both sides of that intersection. But it's a difficult intersection. Now, the stop signs are north and south, and people have a tendency to pull up there. They can't see east or west, and they have to creep out into the intersection out there. Now, if you're going north or south, if you're going east or west, you have to come to almost a complete stop because you can't see the car approaching from the north. On the south side of the street, it's kept pretty good because there's a residence right there on the corner, and he keeps everything mowed on his side. But it's a dangerous intersection. I believe it's a matter of public safety. It's a matter of time till somebody gets run over and killed out there. I think the big picture is I believe that there's people coming from the north there that they try to abide by that stop sign, but they have to pull out there in it, and they can't see sometimes if it's dusk, if it's in late, if it's night or whatever, it's getting dark. They can't see a car that's coming from the east to the west, and they'll pull right out in front of it every time. And I would appreciate your consideration on this thing. It's something that if I have anybody coming to my house or out in the area, I always tell them, be careful, watch those intersections out there because they're dangerous intersections. Now, at Rockwell and Meridian, there's four-way stops, but we need a four-way right there. It's just a matter of time till we have a fatality out there. And I've seen everything from rollovers to motorcycles run over out there a couple of times, everything else. But my true concern is public safety out there. I just don't want anybody killed or hurt out there. And since it's out in that area, they have a tendency to roll that stop sign too. So anyway, I thank you for your time. That's about all I had to say. But I come in here as a concerned citizen. I don't represent anybody but me and the people that live in my neighborhood out there, I guess. But, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Sir, if you'd like to come up. We don't have one of these for you yet. Okay, when you're done talking, just fill one out, please. If I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Robert Stone, 12101 South Council Road, 73173. I am the one on the south side that keeps it cleaned up. So I'm the nearest residence to that intersection. So consequently, whenever there's a wreck, I'm the one out there cleaning up or pulling somebody out of the ditch. The number of accidents that happen out there are not shown on the police report. They can't be. There's not a weekend that goes by that somebody has a near miss. I can tell you the squealing of brakes, even the screaming that we can hear from our house. During the winters, it's just, a near miss, somebody goes off in the ditch again, we pull them out. The city has done a great job of marking the intersection. I mean, there's dead-end signs. The people coming south on Council, there's a big sign, the biggest that the city has, that says, cross traffic does not stop. And the people just continually pull right out there. Earlier this summer, we had a bunch of traffic. There was a dirt pit opened up on down west about a mile. So we had a lot of tractor-trailer rigs, big rigs running the road. And the people that just, you got a big rig running down through there, and they'll just pull right out in front of it, So we've been expecting a death this summer. I think the dirt pit may have slowed down a bit because we don't have the trucks right now, but it would be greatly appreciated to have the four-way.
All right, anybody else speak on this item? Okay. Can we have staff input, please?
All right, you've got our comments before you. Action on this will be at the discretion of the Commission. Always stop-controlled intersections are common and not unexpected in rural or at rural arterial section line road intersections in the city. The establishment of always stop-control at this intersection would be consistent with the traffic control use of some of the surrounding section line road intersections. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion concerning item 5B?
I'll move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Witcher.
Second.
Yes, second from Commissioner George. Any discussion on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5B from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner George. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Okay, item 5C, and just before I read in 5C, Commissioner Witcher is going to step down. If you could show that, please, in the record. Okay, item 5C, James Witcher, Principal Project Manager, ADG, Inc., 116 East Sheridan Avenue, Suite 100, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73104, to consider a request for one, establish 45-degree angle on-street parking on the northwest side of Northwest 10th Street between North Francis Avenue and North Chartel Avenue. Number 2, establish 1-hour time-limited parking on the north side of Northwest 10th Street from approximately 130 feet west to 215 feet west of the west curb line of North Chartel Avenue. 3, establish 2-hour time-limited parking on the northwest side of Northwest 10th Street from approximately 215 feet west to 415 feet west of the west curb line of North Chartel Avenue. Number 4, establish 2 reserved parking spaces for the physically disabled on the north side of Northwest 10th Street from approximately 130 feet west to 155 feet west of the west curb line of North Chartel Avenue, and from approximately 385 feet west to 410 feet west of the west curb line of North Chartel Avenue. 5, establish 2 reserved parking spaces for the physically disabled on the east side of North Francis Avenue from approximately 60 feet north to 90 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 10th Street, and from approximately 335 feet north to 365 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 10th Street. Number 6, establish 2-hour time-limited parking on the west side of North Chartel Avenue between Northwest 10th Street and Northwest 11th Street. And number 7, establish 2 reserved parking spaces for the physically disabled on the west side of North Chartel Avenue from approximately 185 feet north to 215 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 10th Street, and from approximately 330 feet north to 360 feet north of the north curb line of Northwest 10th Street. Here to speak on this item? Okay, if I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
James Witcher, 116 East Sheridan, Oklahoma City. If we can go to the map, will probably be the easiest way to see this. This property is being developed as a multifamily and mixed use, an apartment building with hopefully a restaurant or some other retail amenity at the intersection, the northwest corner of 10th and Chartel. The on-street parking that we are requesting is for the purpose of retail, especially the 1-hour time limited parking for the retail space that is planned for the first floor of the southeast corner of the property. And then the 2-hour time limited is primarily intended for visitors to the leasing office of the apartment complex and for visitors to residents. We suspect along Francis, there is some stoop-type entry into apartments, and we expect that some residents will also park there if they can get an open space. But it's primarily to create a more urban feel to the street and have ease of access for potential residents and folks utilizing the retail space.
All right, anybody else here to speak on this item? Can we have staff input, please?
Okay, well, I think you've got a pretty comprehensive description of the proposed development. What you're looking at today is a request for angle parking. It'll be inset angle parking on Northwest 10th Street in the block between Chartel and Francis. The street is amply wide enough in order to accommodate this particular type of movement. Similar on-street angle parking exists near the roundabout near 10th Street and Walker. The one thing of note on this particular application is that there are 6 spaces being requested to be reserved for the physically disabled, which up until the passage of an ordinance, well, that became effective earlier this month. Hearing this particular type of an application would have been limited to just looking at approving 2 spaces for the physically disabled. This particular application's got 6, but that's now an allowable thing for you to recommend onto the City Council. So, action on this matter will be at your discretion. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. May I have a motion concerning item 5C?
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve Mr. Worcester's application as stated.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Schuline. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Jenkins. Any talk on this item? Okay, we have a motion to approve item 5C from Commissioner Schuline, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Can I have your votes, please? Okay, item is approved. Let the record show that Commissioner Witcher has returned up on the horseshoe. Okay, we go on now to item 5D, City Manager's Office and Oklahoma City Police Department to consider a recommendation to the Oklahoma City Council on the ordinance amending Articles 1 and 2 and add in Article 3 to Chapter 56 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code 2010 regarding motor vehicle for hire. Mr. Dwyer? And sir, if I have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is M.T. Berry. I'm with the City Manager's Office. It's a pleasure to be here before you this afternoon. You say I have 5 minutes, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay. I'll do my best. Following its introduction into Oklahoma City, I believe in around October of last year, Uber, staff began looking to find out exactly what a Uber was. And it was quickly recognized as we looked at it that it was a type of vehicle for hire by our definitions in state law. But it didn't fit anything that we had on the books at the time. We met with the police department about the situation, and after looking and studying the business model that we knew of at that time and looking at our ordinances, we determined very quickly that it would be very dangerous for us to try to enforce those ordinances against this organization or this type of a company. And so based on our early observations, we met with members of City Council who gave us the directive to try to go back and establish an ordinance that addresses public safety and consumer protection concerns, while at the same time taking the business model of Uber at the time into consideration. So what I'm here before you today to do is to present you, and I think we've sent this out so that everybody had a chance to review it, look at it, and see what was in there. What we are proposing to you as the regulations right now that would be applied towards what we consider now a transportation network company, or a TNC, and a transportation network vehicle, which is a TNV. We didn't make that up. Cities and states throughout the country are using these terms to define this type of vehicle for hire service. Okay. We spent the last roughly 8 or 9 months actually researching what other cities were doing, researching the business model of Uber, trying to figure out as much of it as we could. We also spent time meeting with representatives from our local taxi and limousine companies to get their input on this. We were fortunate enough to be able to sit down face-to-face with representatives from Uber and discuss our concerns with them and the direction that we were going in. And most recently, I believe in April of this year, a company by the name of Lyft introduced service in Oklahoma City. And we were able to at least converse with them over the telephone in a conference call about these regulations. Copies were sent to them, and copies were sent to Uber. And so what we're trying to do today is give you kind of an overview since you've had a chance to look at it. And then I do have some help with me here today to help answer questions because there's no way that I can remember everything that we've talked about over the variety of months. Haley Rawson, your municipal counselor, was involved in those. I have Cindy Richard, who's the head of our city prosecutor's office, participated in that. I have Sergeant Dancy and Chief City from the police department, and also Deputy Chief Ken McDonald. So I'm going to be calling on them to help me with any questions that you all might have as it relates to this. As you said, Commissioner, what we're presenting to you today is the amendments to Chapter 56 of the Oklahoma City Municipal Code. In Articles 1 and 2, we tried to not make a lot of changes in those articles. Those are the existing articles. However, there were some areas where we had to make a few changes in there in order to bring those chapters up to current practices, and we had to address some legal issues as we were going through that were discovered because of changes in the law. And so there are some changes reflected in Article 1 and Article 2. Article 3 is the entire article dedicated to transportation network companies and transportation network vehicles. Article 1 and 2 do not apply to those companies. So you'll see almost a duplication in some cases of Articles 1 inside of the Article 3. Okay? When you look at the regulations, please keep in mind that the regulations require the TNC, the Transportation Network Company, to come in and get a license, just like we do for companies now. It requires them to first go to the state, visit with the State Corporation Commission, get the certificate of necessity, and then come to us with that information, and then we issue them a license. It also would require their drivers to receive permits from our transportation, our vehicle for hire supervisor. It requires the vehicle for hire supervisor to inspect their vehicles in much the same manner that we do for taxis and limos. It requires them to have a background check in much the same manner, and have the company policies as it relates to drugs and alcohol, have a physical of the driver, or at least a representative from a doctor saying the driver is available or able to drive a vehicle. And all of these things renew annually. Okay? One of the other provisions in there is the insurance provision. We visited at some length with Uber concerning insurance. And Uber did finally allow our legal staff to look at their insurance policy. However, they would not allow that to anyone outside of our legal staff because of the proprietary nature of their insurance. Our legal staff, in turn, met with the city's insurance expert to look at that insurance coverage to make sure that it was consistent with what we would require for a vehicle for hire. And the city's insurance expert, after several meetings and questions and things along those lines, said that he felt that that insurance coverage was compatible with what we are requiring and compatible with what we would require. Okay? Some of the concessions that we've received from Uber, because their vehicles will have to have, the Uber vehicles will have to have, and Lyft vehicles, will have to have an inspection decal affixed to them, according to our regulations that we're proposing. And they will have to display what we call trade dress on their vehicles anytime the vehicles are being used for TNV services. Okay? Understanding, and I hope most of you understand how these companies operate and what they do in terms of how they get their drivers. Their drivers are just like us, that they actually contract with those people to provide services using their own personal vehicles. In the instance of Lyft, their trade dress is the pink mustache on the front of the vehicle. And I understand that Uber has a trade dress. It's an iridescent 8 or U that attaches to the vehicle window. And those would have to be in place at the time the vehicle is operating on the company's digital platform. And going back a little bit on the insurance, per our regulations, we're asking that we propose that the insurance provided by the company cover the vehicles. First of all, anytime the driver is signed onto Uber's digital platform, and there is one level of coverage for that, which would be our state liability minimums, and then there is another level of coverage that would apply whenever that driver is signed onto the platform and en route to pick up a passenger. From that time until he has dropped that passenger off, that the other rate of service of insurance would apply. So those are some of the basic things. Most of the other regulations, the public safety regulations, most of those, not all, but most of those are addressed the same as it is for taxis and limos. There are a few variances here or there, but that's pretty much, as you've probably seen as you've looked at the regulations, is pretty much where some of the major differences are. So I'd be happy to answer any questions or get my colleagues to assist me with answering any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, we do have a big list of people who wish to talk on this item. I'd like to go ahead and split it up. As a starting point, I'd like to have the Transportation Network Company people, someone who wishes to speak on that end, seeing as this ordinance is mainly dealing with Article 3. So if I could have some of them start coming up, and when we're done with them, we'll get going into the taxi limo type talk. So is anybody here from Transportation Network Vehicles that would like to talk? Okay. Well, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am? Have you already filled out one of our forms? Yes. Okay. If I have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is April Mims. My address, I'm a representative for Lyft. The address is 548 Market Street, San Francisco, California. Okay, so first I want to thank the committee for conducting this hearing and allowing for public comments. We believe that we have a huge economic and transportation engine that we can provide to the city, great benefits. Transportation network companies are the wave of the future, and Oklahoma City should be a part of that movement. However, we are deeply concerned that if this ordinance were to be implemented in its current form, that it would make it difficult for Lyft to survive in Oklahoma City. Let me tell you why. So we've heard a lot about the regulations with respect to taxi services, but it's important to remember that Lyft and Uber are not taxi services. We are not limo services. Lyft is a technology platform that allows private citizens to use their private cars for occasional ride sharing. They don't respond to hails. They don't sit at taxi stands. There are no credit cards or cash that's exchanged. Everything that happens over the cell phone. We also do not own a fleet of cars. We do not employ drivers. 70% of our drivers at Lyft drive less than 15 hours a week on average. It's really important to remember. To summarize, Lyft is a completely new model that was developed to respond to a market demand for more affordable transportation via private car. To force Lyft to comply with regulations outlined in a for-hire ordinance will dissuade regular folks like you and I and other people in this room who have passed the background check and our stringent requirements from participating in ride sharing. That is the concern. The drivers are the backbone of this platform, and if they're not allowed to get onboarded, then every time we open up this app in the future, we're not going to see cars, and people will close up the app and they will not use it anymore. Now, I know there's been a lot of discussion about safety, and just so you all know, that's critical to Lyft. In fact, it's one of the pillars of our company. We know that if people don't feel comfortable getting into the car with a stranger, they won't use the app. And so from Lyft's perspective, we have strong background requirements. We contract with a company called Sterling Backcheck, and they do a county, state, and federal search on anyone who wants to drive on the Lyft platform. Anyone with a violent offense is automatically screened out of the platform. Anyone with a sexual offense, screened out of the platform. Anyone with a drug-related offense is screened out of the platform. Anyone with a reckless driving offense that's in the past 7 years is screened out of the platform. We also do a DMV check every 90 days. Anyone with more than 2 moving violations in the past 3 years is screened out of the Lyft platform. In fact, using this criteria, over 90% of people that apply to be a Lyft driver are actually screened out. So this is really important to remember. We also offer a first-of-its-kind $1 million insurance policy for drivers and third parties the moment they are matched with a driver until the time that they leave a vehicle. So given all of this information, we strongly urge this commission to take a step back before rushing into moving forward with this ordinance. We look forward to working with the city, working with City Council, working with this commission to develop an appropriate framework. But we are very concerned about the onboarding process for drivers, and we feel like we have a framework that's able to meet the needs and to also provide the city with the appropriate oversight. We like the idea of licensing the transportation network company. We understand that there are requirements that need to be met, but put that onus on the company. That's what we're asking. So we hope that we have an opportunity to continue to work on this ordinance, to continue to work with the city, to develop a framework that will provide the appropriate oversight, but allow Lyft to continue to operate. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. Anybody else to speak from a transportation network company? Or okay, let's go ahead and start with the rest of everybody. Why don't we go with taxi services? Anybody from the taxi industry that wishes to come up and talk? No? Okay. We'll start at the front and work our way back. If I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Okay, my name is Carl Gaskins. My address is 1424 Northwest 28th Street, and I'm here to speak about Chapter 56. First of all, as far as like the previous lady said, that her company doesn't own any vehicles, they don't have any drivers as employees. That's a very, very similar situation with the cab companies. Most cab companies don't own any vehicles. Those owners, or the vehicles are owned by third parties or by the driver themselves. Employees, drivers are all contractors. They're not employees of the company. This idea that that has to be that, this idea that these regulations that are being put forth would be bad, I think is wrong. The city needs to know who's driving. They need to know the backgrounds of these people. They need to be background checked. The vehicles need to be inspected. If we put that burden on the company themselves, there's no proper oversight. There's some things that as I was reading through the proposed 56 I've got a concern with. One thing is there's a reference or a definition given for a vehicle for hire. It seems that in the language there anyway, I've listened to Mr. Berry, that transportation networks are excluded from vehicle for hire. I know he didn't say it that way, but when I look at the language in here, I get that impression. They're not specifically enumerated in the definition of vehicle for hire. And then later in Article 3, there's a few places, I don't have the exact reference, but it mentions TNV versus vehicle for hire, to where they're separate entities. I think that probably needs to be clarified. In the vehicle for or the TNV section, there's references to the rates. In a taxi cab, the cab companies have to state what their rates are. We have to go with what our rates are. We list it to the city. In the TNV, it looks like those rates are very fluid. They can change from minute to minute, hour to hour based on the app. I don't think that's a good thing. A person might ride from Edmond to Bricktown and pay one rate, and then find later that when they're riding from Bricktown back to Edmond, they're paying 4 or 5 times that rate. That's not a good thing. It's not good for the public. The person on the return trip may not be as sober as when they went. So the fact that it states it somewhere in the app doesn't necessarily, I don't think, make it a good thing. We need to be concerned with that. There's, let's see, a question about some other things in there that I wanted to point out. Let's see. Smoking. In a taxi cab, smoking is prohibited at all times. It's a smoke-free environment. In a TNV, it looks like it only has to be smoking from the minute, or non-smoking from the minute the passenger gets in. That's probably not a good thing for public safety. If it's required to be smoke-free all the time for a taxi cab and these network vehicles, it needs to be non-smoking all the time also for the same reasons, for public safety. There may be some type of residue that the person has an allergic reaction to or whatever, so that needs to be kept clean all the time, not just when there's passengers in the car. That's it for now.
All right, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, ma'am, I think you had your hand up. If you'd like to come on up. If I can have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes. She's got her.
Good afternoon. My name is Pam Thompson. I'm one of the managing partners of Yellow Cab of Oklahoma. And first of all, I'd like to say that Yellow Cab Company is a digital transportation service. We are a digital transportation company, and we have been for the better part of a decade. We dispatch our service over a digital platform. We do everything that these companies do and more. I have more transportation in my vehicle than any of, more technology in my vehicles than any of these people have in theirs. We connect riders with drivers over a digital platform. So I object. First of all, I thank them for what they've done, and it's good as far as it goes, but I object to any distinction between them and a for-hire vehicle. It's not the service they're providing that's different, because the taxi industry has used apps and many of these applications for the better part of a decade and longer. What's different is they're requesting to be exempt from the municipal ordinances and having to abide by the same rules that we have to abide by. So here's my position. If you're going to exempt them, exempt me. If they don't have to have a unifying color scheme, I don't want one. It's very expensive for the capitalization to put these vehicles into full-time service, and it's difficult to find part-time vehicles for when demand is high. We'd like to be able to have all these same privileges that they have. If they don't have to provide commercial insurance on a 24/7, 365 basis, if their drivers can just have private insurance limits when their app is not on, I can do the same thing. I have all that same technology. I want those same privileges. I want our insurance to be limited while operating as a vehicle for hire. We want to be allowed to use the metered parking spaces and the public parking spaces in downtown Oklahoma City and in Bricktown, and not be ticketed for when we're sitting in those places waiting for service. We want you to eliminate your authority to set what a reasonable fare is. We want to be able to flex surge price just like they do. You tell me what my business model is supposed to look like on New Year's Eve. If I have to sit to $2 a mile while they're doing 100, who's going to drive for me? Do you want everybody in this city picked up? We should not have to walk away from a century, the better part of a century. We've operated in this town since 1918, of call center development in response to your ordinances, brand name recognition, and ordinance compliance and being good tax-paying citizens in order to compete on a level field. Either demand vehicle for hire service is an essential service and can be regulated, or it's not. I'm just asking for fair. I ask you to look to other municipalities, some of the Texas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, Pittsburgh. I ask you to look at the D.C. study, which is excellent. And I ask that we need a cease and desist order. These people have been flagrantly operating in violation of our current ordinances since October. And what has happened? Nothing. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, somebody else from the taxi industry wishes to come on up? Okay, from the limo industry. Anybody else wish to speak on that? If I have your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Richard Ogden. My address is 612 Northeast 17th Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I'm here today in a capacity as representative of Kings Worldwide Transportation, which is a limousine company. Our firm and the attorney who will follow me, Colin Walkie, have been working with the city and with M.T. Berry and the Attorney's Office for the last few months, and we thank you very much for your hard work. There have been some great strides made with regard to the proposed ordinance. After hearing some of the comments from Yellow Cab, I can tell you that those same concerns are echoed by the limousine company, at least the one that I represent. And it comes down to an issue which my colleague will address in categories, and that really has to do with the fairness issue and really some disclosure issues. And one thing that was interesting when Lyft came into Oklahoma City, Uber sent out an email, and I received that, and that email said free service for 2 weeks. I thought, well, that's interesting, how you can get contract for hire people to work free for 2 weeks. So what we did is we hired some private investigators to get into the Uber cabs. Indeed, they were not working for free. What was happening is they were being paid. They were being paid by a national company. And in fact, there is the issue as to whether or not Uber and Lyft and other companies like them want to hold themselves out to be transportation network companies, or as what they said in a federal court brief only a few months ago, they're only a technology platform. So I don't know exactly what time and when they are, what they are. And I think that's when we get into some of the details, such as needing to know who their officers, the directors, their owners are. Who are the responsible parties? How do we hold them accountable? And so in a way, the ordinance is very good. It needs to be tightened up. My colleague will talk about ways to tighten that up in terms of some of the issues. But I think the grander issue is how is that going to be enforced? Because if in fact, really the only thing that the city can grab is just that driver, I don't think there's going to be much enforcement, well, against that driver, but not really when there's a major incident. Since it's interesting because I heard the person from Lyft speak, and they said, I think the quote was that they are only a technology platform. That was their distinction. But then I heard her say, don't put the onus on the drivers. Put the onus on the company. What company? What officers? What shareholders? What assets? And I think that's the biggest issue. So we complement the hard work of this commission and the requirements of fairness, the requirements of public safety. We thank the city attorney's office and we thank M.T. Berry. We do, and I did send a letter to each one of the commissioners. I believe you all have that. Rather than spend time reading that, if you'll consider putting that in the record. My colleague will talk on some of those details. Again, we just need to tighten up. I think that ordinance, I think that the issues raised by Yellow Cab either, make it fair for everybody and make public safety the concern, or, let's figure out a way to work through these remaining issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So if I could have your name and your address. Have you filled out one of the blue forms yet?
I have.
Okay, very good. And you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Colin Walke, and I'm here with Richard Ogden. My address is 210 Park Avenue, Suite 3030, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, 73102. And I would like to kind of outline in bullet point format some of the issues that we saw when going through these regulations. And of the utmost concern, no doubt, to this traffic commission, as well as to the city council, will be public safety. As my colleague Richard just mentioned, in a federal court pleading just a few months ago, Uber said, we're nothing more than a technological application. That's all we are. And here they are today saying, okay, we're a transportation network company. Well, how do we ensure that we hold Ubers and Lyfts and other transportation network companies' feet to the fire when it comes time for liability to be sought? For example, you impose upon motor vehicles for hire when they apply for a license that they disclose the names of their owners and their agents. You do not have a similar requirement for TNCs. That's a big question. Why? If openness and honesty is of paramount importance, then they need to disclose who their owners are as well. Another issue that was mentioned earlier are fare rates. So if a motor vehicle for hire goes in and applies for a license, they have to explain what their rates are. Transportation network companies don't have to. Right now, motor vehicles for hire are required to disclose their rates to make sure that they are reasonable and non-discriminatory. If Uber and Lyft and some of the other companies engage in surge pricing, that is essentially code for price gouging. That allows them to be discriminatory by definition in the fares that they provide. And as a result of that, TNC's obligations with regard to disclosures of fares should be the same as motor vehicles for hire. Another issue, placards. Motor vehicles for hire are required to provide placards with the City Action Call Center number in their vehicles. Why? In case there's an incident and we need to get a hold of the city. Transportation network companies do not have to have placards in their vehicles. The lawsuit that my colleague and I have been speaking about was as a result of an altercation between an Uber driver and a passenger, where allegedly the passenger was struck by the Uber driver. The Uber driver, according to News 9, stated that he had difficulty getting a hold of anybody with Uber. Well, part of that problem would be solved if there was a direct link between the city and whoever it was that was driving that TNC, or that TNV as the case may be. As a result, placards should be imposed upon every single transportation network for hire vehicle. Motor vehicles for hire are required to have a sufficient number of staff to safely operate their vehicles and abide by the city regulations. And that's certainly a reasonable request. If you only have 2 or 3 motor vehicles for hire, yet you have 100 requests, you're going to be hurrying from one fare to the next. And so as a result of that, you're imposing upon motor vehicles for hire a sufficient number of cars to handle their fare load. The same thing should happen with TNCs. They should have a sufficient number of vehicles for hire to handle their fare load. You require motor vehicles for hire to tell you when they've put a new car into service. Why? Well, we want to know who's operating that car. Open, honest. That's all we're asking for. TNCs, they don't have to tell you when they put a new motor vehicle into service. They should be required to, for openness, protection of citizens. Record keeping. Motor vehicles for hire must disclose their records to the motor vehicle for hire inspector upon request. Transportation network companies, as it is currently written, only have to produce it upon court order or subpoena as determined in good faith for an exigent circumstance by the TNC themselves. The TNC gets to decide whether or not to disclose their records. That is blatantly unfair, and it does not protect the citizens of the city of Oklahoma City. You heard Mr. Berry speak about the insurance issues. Currently, as it is written, the TNCs have to provide essentially the same insurance policies for motor vehicles for hire only when they are actually engaged in a fare. In other words, when somebody is actually in the vehicle. If they are in between fares, their insurance requirements go down to $50,000, $25,000, $100,000 limits. As we noted in the email to you all, this past New Year's Eve, a small child was killed in San Francisco as an Uber driver was in between fares. It is wrong, and it is not in the interests of the citizens of Oklahoma City to say, just because you're in between fares, we can lower your limits. They should have the same insurance limits, irrespective of whether or not they are actually engaged in a fare or in between fares. That's what you impose upon motor vehicles for hire. You should impose it upon TNCs. Finally, there's a definition contained in the TNCs for good cause. You can terminate the licenses for motor vehicles for hire, for TNCs only upon good cause. There is no similar definition or requirement in motor vehicles for hire. Why not? There should be. It's about an equal playing field. And so these are some of the concerns that we have with regard to the proposed regulations. They are neither fair to the citizens of Oklahoma City with regard to the discriminatory rates. They are not safe for the citizens of Oklahoma City because we don't know who's operating these companies. and they are not fair to the other businesses engaged in Oklahoma City that abide by your regulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we still have some more people that wish to talk. We can just go ahead and have you come on up one at a time. We can call you up. Chris Meredith. So if I could have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My name's Chris Meredith. I'm with Farmers Insurance at 7340 West Memorial, Oklahoma City. And generally, I just wanted to say thanks for having us here. Thanks for letting me speak for a moment, and let you know that our position on this issue is, from an insurance standpoint, is that we think they should all have commercial coverage from beginning to end, especially when they turn the app on to the moment it's off. And in general, we think the ordinance as proposed is steps in the right direction of where this needs to go. One thing I was sitting there thinking about was the different limits on when the app is on, there's no fare in the car. I don't know if that is appropriate. I mean, you can think about texting and driving, people playing with their phones, distracted driving. I don't know that maybe it needs to be more in that part of the fare because you're engaging in that as part of your job. But our main concern is in regards to the commercial coverage that they currently have, and that it be primary. Right now, our understanding is it's a secondary coverage, which will create a big problem when the accident happens. What you're going to get is they're going to file on their personal policy, there's going to be an investigation, then it's going to go to the Uber side, and they're going to investigate, and you're talking about a big time delay until that person gets help. So that's something else to consider. With that, just want to let you know that we do support the ordinance. It is steps in the right direction, but please consider, as some of the other people have noted, a lot of concerns with it. Consider those, and thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much. Next, David Batson.
I respectfully pass. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we got one more, Chuck Cotton. If I could have your name, your address, and you have up to 5 minutes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name's Chuck Cotton. I'm the owner of VIP Limousine. I have operations in Tulsa and Oklahoma City. My office here is 700 North Tulsa Avenue. Got so much here to say, I can't obviously do it in 5 minutes. I'm very involved nationally opposing these companies. There's a group of us who have filed a RICO complaint, a criminal complaint with U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. I can't tell you where it is, what they're doing at this point, but it's our hope that federal grand jury indictments will be forthcoming against both of these companies. It's very serious. And this is a criminal conspiracy that's sweeping America. Every city has got similar problems in the states that they represent. Here, the city of Oklahoma City certainly has to protect itself. And perhaps this is why you need to give consideration, even though we don't agree totally with everything in the amendments, but we do think that the enforcement, if they do obtain a city of Oklahoma City license, if there's an accident, then at least the city does not have the exposure that they would have as they have right now. And some of the key things here, in order to even apply, if you pass this, is that they have to have an Oklahoma Corporation Commission license before they can even apply here. Well, they're not going to do that. They're not going to get one. They have yet to obey any type of court order throughout the United States in any city or state. Judgments, any type of regulatory order, they have not complied any place. They won't hear. Now, Major and the staff has done a great job. This is as good that I've seen so far, and I've seen many of the states and cities, what they're trying to do, and all this lingo, ride sharing, there is no ride sharing, transportation network, whatever they want to call it. They innovate all this in order to manipulate city councils, state legislators, and particularly a lot of these lobbyists. They're hiring them all over, big bucks. They hired a group here. They tried to get the laws changed here. Well, it didn't happen. Fortunately, Representative Joyner did not let that go into committee. He needs more information. The insurance has been ruled on by 18 different state insurance commissioners as fraudulent. The city of San Francisco, the DA, fraudulent. They've ruled it. It was in the San Francisco Chronicle. I'm sure you're aware of this. And on and on. The company is James River. It's an offshore Bermuda company. They're not even registered in the state of Oklahoma. They're not registered anyplace. It's a general surplus liability company. And this is just all untrue representations that they're waving this flag. Their websites, what they advertise, the social media marketing is nothing but a con game. That's the best way to put it. And that's why that I think that the federal government will step in here and shut them down. Now, they either got to comply with the laws as they exist. There's nothing wrong with our laws. State of Oklahoma, Title 47, that's fine. It's not perfect. Section 56 is fine. Yes, it can be improved. There's some improvements forthcoming, certainly. But they have to comply. They cannot operate on the streets and highways of Oklahoma. It's illegal. It's just that simple. And we're hoping that the Attorney General, Scott Pruitt, if this is passed, finally will take action, because they can't run in the state of Oklahoma. It's a violation. It's against the law. So if they come here and they're going to try to get an Oklahoma City permit, they must have an OCC license. I don't think they're going to get one. So I want to just end this, that we urge you to consider innovation. We're certainly not against it. I believe in free enterprise, but they got to comply with the law. The city has to protect themselves too at the same time. Most important. Thank you very much. Any questions?
No, that's fine. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is anybody else wishing to speak on this item? Yes, sir. Please come on up. Name. Yes, sir. When you're done talking, just fill it out. If I can have your name and your address, and you have up to 5 minutes.
My name is Jimmy Paris. I'm at 13500 Tuscany in Oklahoma City. I've been in the limousine business for 27 years. I've seen this town grow, and it's grown tremendously. But here's the situation. I've dealt with some issues with Uber, specifically with Uber, because I have a contract with ESPN. One of the deals with Uber is we give away free cards, free certificates. Here's your ticket. Here's $5,000 in certificates. You can use Uber for free. What they're basically saying is, hey, we're a $400 million company. We can rule the world. I'm sorry, I'm not a $400 million company. I can't give away free transportation. But that's their next line, is if we just give free transportation, we're not really a hire-for-hire company. We're a free company. A new company now is called Sidecar. Sidecar now is offering free transportation in Oklahoma City. I'm going, okay, so how in the world is anybody going to stay in business? Well, their whole philosophy is, well, let's run these companies like Paris Limousines out of business. They've been there for 27 years. It's okay, let's just run them out of business. let's just do this and screw everybody in this town. Basically, that's the right word for it, because that's exactly what they're doing to us. You know, I mean, from the day one, we had to operate Oklahoma City license, but you had to go to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and get your state license. You had to go get your cars inspected. You had to do everything exactly by the books. That's what we're asking for. The city of Miami, Florida basically kicked Uber out of the city and said, you can't be here. You're operating illegally. We don't want you. You know, Oklahoma City's not asking that. All they're saying is, hey, do it right. If you want to be a licensed company, do like the rest of the companies. Go get your state license first, get your city license, and then follow the procedures. And that's all we're asking for. But we're also asking to be fair about it. I mean, the rules and regulations needs to be fair for every one of us, because just inspection on a cars alone is very difficult. You know, to get the drivers to be licensed and get them permitted and do the background checks and do the vehicle checks on them, the driving record checks, the DOT with the medical checks. That's very important, because you definitely don't want a driver that might have a heart ailment to be driving or a problem with his eyesight to be driving. I mean, that's very, very important. And then also the background check. I mean, you don't know what the character of these people. I was at the Skirvin the other day, and I simply asked the Uber driver, what's the qualifications to become an Uber driver? Just have a car, have a cell phone, and they do everything for us. I go, do you have any background in training or anything to do with driving a professional car? Oh, no, absolutely nothing. We just provide our own cars. And this is just a network of ride sharing only. Well, as I saw four of my ESPN customers get in their car, I'm thinking, well, that's 4 customers that this city has lost. That's money that, as a taxpayer, I'm paying out and keeping this city alive. And I'll tell you what, the city is growing, and we really do need to be very careful that the big companies and strong companies in town don't get wiped out on this. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? Mr. Berry, would you like to have any follow-up or anything right now before we press on?
Just respond to any questions that the commission might have.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll go ahead. Okay, nobody else wishing to speak on this item. Do we have a motion concerning item 5D?
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins to approve item 5D. We have a second.
A second.
Okay, we have a second from Commissioner Hale. Do we have any talk on this item? Sir?
Mr. Berry, at the moment, police are not able to, what are we able to enforce currently with respect to the ride sharing or the Ubers and Lyft companies?
The situation we're in currently is this. Yes, there are vehicles out there operating on the Uber platform and on the Lyft platform. Based on our current ordinance, in visiting with the city prosecutor's office, we determined that there were not, those ordinances were not specific enough to cover this particular business model. The last thing that we would want to do is go out and try to enforce what we've got on the books now and end up making bad case law.
Thanks.
Bad case law doesn't do anyone good, but that would be exactly where we were headed. Many other cities have tried that and it did not work. And so rather than try to do that and end up with bad case law, we decided to try to at least build an ordinance that we believe applies to Uber and their drivers, and then base our enforcement on that ordinance. As you can see from everything you've heard so far, that's why it's taken us so long to get here. We've talked about a lot of these issues. We've tried to work with a lot of these issues, and some of them just can't be addressed in the manner that some of the people would like to have them addressed. And so right now, we really don't believe that we can enforce the current regulations because we don't believe they specifically apply enough. We do believe that what we're proposing can be enforced. Uber, Lyft are both California corporations. We're a municipal government. How do we compel them to do anything? What we can compel is the drivers. They are local, they work for the companies, and we can compel local regulations on them. Unless Uber and Lyft submit themselves to us, we really don't have a reach that we can get to them. As a state, maybe we could. Under state regulations, maybe they could do something like that, but there are no state regulations right now. All we have is what we're proposing for you today. And while if Uber and Lyft come in and get their company license like we suggested, then their vehicles can legally operate on our platform in Oklahoma City. If they don't come in and get their company license, then their vehicles cannot legally operate in Oklahoma City. And we can take enforcement action based on what we've got in our ordinance now. But we simply can't, without being able to enforce those things on the drivers, we have limited ability to touch Lyft and Uber unless they voluntarily submit themselves to our regulations and our jurisdiction.
Interesting. Sir, do you have anything else? Sir, do you have anything? Sir?
Mr. Berry, one of the representatives had said something about, let us do our own background checks. Could you address that as far as would those background checks through the company be comparable with what the city would require?
We've asked at a minimum that the background checks, currently, right now, what we do for background checks is we send drivers who are trying to get their permit to drive to OSBI. And OSBI does a background check, gives it to the driver brings it to us. For the transportation network companies, we've asked them if they can assure us and prove to us that the OSBI records were checked amongst all of the other things that they do and provide us with a copy of that, then that would suffice for our background checks.
All right, sir, do you have anything else? Sir?
Mr. Berry, I think that a number of the speakers pretty eloquent in their contrasting the comparing the two and the requirements of both. Did you consider, or not you, but some staff attorney maybe, consider some of these items that they brought up? For example, the pricing, which is...
Yes, we did. Most of the items that they brought up, we did consider. They did send that to us before. As it relates to the pricing, right now, it's our understanding that, at least with Uber, and I believe Lyft is the same way, whenever you go on your cell phone, the application that they have, and apply for or indicate that you need transportation, and where you want to go to, it'll indicate on their cell phone, or the application will tell you what the rate is at that time. And you also, of course, in order to get the app downloaded onto your phone, you have to submit credit card information at that point. So the transaction, whenever you agree to take that ride, the transaction occurs there. But you are looking at the phone, and I believe they have an option on there also that will allow you an estimate of what it would cost to go from point A to point B. So all of that information is readily available to anybody who would want to use the Uber platform or the Lyft platform. And so we determined at that point that it's a consumer issue. If the rate is too high, they won't take it. If it's at the right price, they will take it. But they have that choice before the car is ever summoned, that they can look at, see, and figure out what the rate's going to be, what it's going to cost them to get from point A to point B. You don't necessarily have that with a taxi cab, as it stands right now. If some point the taxi industry, I heard, yes, sir. Oh, okay. If at some point the taxi industry, and I believe that they indicated that some of them do have digital platforms, but if they get to a point to where something like that would be feasible with them, we'll certainly look at that, but I'm not aware of one right now that has that ability.
Okay, so if we could just hold on that one. Ma'am, did you want to say something on this issue? Would you come up here, please?
do in any Uber vehicle. And we can do this. We're not allowed to do this. It's against the ordinances. We've got our app is better than their app. I am on an app. It's going to go live here this week. It's going to connect me with every major market in the United States, the largest taxi company in every market in the United States, and we can do these things. We can, I mean, if they call the call center, it's digital. We record every conversation. We can have, there's ways to say, okay, our price index at this time is XYZ. Do you agree to this? You know, do I think it's in the best interest of the citizens of Oklahoma City? No. But we can do it, and if you're going to let them do it, let me do it. I just want fair. That's what it comes down to. I just want fair.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Sir, do you want to come back on this issue, or you're okay right there? Okay, good. Sir, do you have another item? Okay.
Ask a couple more questions, just about the placards. You know, apparently taxi cabs are required to post placards, and Uber or Lyft are not. Is that a...
The placard that gives the number to the Action Center?
Mm-hmm.
We did discuss that, and I don't remember the details on it, except that we decided at that point that we were not going to require that. Does anybody remember why? We didn't feel it was necessary, but I honestly don't recall why we said no.
And just kind of going down this list of some of the other things that were brought up, the list of vehicles that as vehicles come in and out of service, it seems like...
Right. They are required to report to us the number of vehicles by month that are permanently taken out of service. We did not require them to tell us about the number of vehicles going into service, because they are required to send those drivers to us in order to get their permits.
Okay, and ma'am, if you could, I have your name, your address, and
Yes,
fill
sir,
out one of the
Commissioner.
forms when you're done, please.
Cindy Richard with the City Attorney's Office here in this building. Just on the regard to the placard, we were racking our brain about that, and because you have to understand, we've had literally hours and hours and hours of meetings with any number of parties on this, so we're all trying to recall things that have been discussed. I'm not quite sure that we ever discussed the issue of the placards inside the vehicles that would give the number to the Action Center or somewhere in the city. I don't recall ever having that conversation. What I can tell you is that, you know, we were having communications come in until the midnight hour on this, and, you know, we tried to look at everything that we could. We spent a lot of time laying out Articles 1, 2, and 3 side by side to do a comparison about when you take into consideration the business model, which is what our client instructed us to do. If you take into consideration the business models involved, how fair can you make it from article to article? How consistent can we be from article to article? And that is really what we try to do. And we made a number of changes when things were brought to our attention. Hey, you make taxis and limos do this, why not TNVs? And we would look at it and say, well, yeah, why not? And we did, to the extent that we felt we could. So I don't think we discussed that. I know that to a lot of folks, 8 or 9 months on drafting this ordinance may seem like a really long time. I can tell you, I've been involved in the rewrites of at least 4 different chapters in the city code, and none were less than a year. So we've actually tried to speed this up, and, you know, are there things we could tweak? Certainly there are. But I think we've hit most of the major issues. But I really just got up to say that about the placards. I just don't think that we've really talked about it that much.
Okay, sir, do you have more? You don't have any more issues right now? Okay. Ma'am? Sir?
Hit on most of mine, but the insurance issue that was brought up by about everybody. Can you explain again what the Uber or Lyft or Sidecar, what their requirements are? They just have their everyday car, but then when they log in, their amounts go up, and then when they actually go to pick up somebody, it jumps up a third level?
Right. And correct me on this if I'm wrong, staff. right now, our requirements on the transportation network vehicles would be that whenever the driver is logged onto the digital platform, that is, he could be sitting at home
Right.
with it on. When he's logged onto the digital platform, at that point, I believe is where we have the insurance coverages at that stage, or the basic liability coverage, which I think is actually, we require actually more than the state minimums, right, for liability. Whenever they are responding to a pickup, transporting a pickup, during that time until they drop that passenger off, then the higher level of coverage goes into effect.
Okay. And you are requiring the Uber company itself, said that you've looked at their policy, and that policy is an umbrella of?
Yes, it is.
Assuming that they're going to come into the state and sign up.
Right. If Uber, again, if Uber comes in and gets their license, then they will have to comply with that
Right.
insurance.
And you say that in a way that you don't expect them to, or you do expect them to?
I certainly hope that they will, but as you can see, that we still have some differences between us and them.
Right. Okay. And is there a time limit from the time this is passed? I guess it goes to city council to actually approve it, but is there a time limit set on how long they have to come in? Because at some point, you said that Uber's out if they don't come in. Is there a deadline for them to come and?
Yes, it is. I believe that we set that at 30 days or 60 days.
The TNC company is supposed to come into compliance 30 days after the effective date of the ordinance, and then there is a difference for the driver's compliance, which is November 19th of this year, or if the Traffic Commission determines that a later date would be considered.
But if Uber doesn't come in within 30 days after the effective date, then Uber is no longer allowed in Oklahoma City.
All their drivers are illegal. Now, we will certainly commence shortly after that, start looking at commencing enforcement activities, and we'll just have to see where that takes us.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Any other talk from up here in the horseshoe? Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Jenkins to approve item 5D, seconded by Commissioner Hale. Have your votes, please. Okay, item is approved. All right, we go on to item 6. To get to that. Item 6 is comments from citizens. Do we have anybody here that wishes to speak? Okay, we go on to item 7, reports and items from traffic commissioners, etc. We'll start with Commissioner Witcher.
I have nothing to report this month.
Commissioner Littlefield.
I actually have nothing to report this month.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hale.
Nothing to report, sir.
Commissioner Schuline.
No, sir. Thank you.
Hold on one second, please. All right, so none from Commissioner Schuline. Commissioner Jenkins? Okay, Commissioner George?
I guess just the comment about this would be that, I guess when both sides don't like it, maybe it's okay. Neither side liked it. So there you go.
And that's a great summary. Something needed to be done, and you had to take both sides and create that center line. And I think that the staff and the city and the different companies worked very hard to come up with this product that's in the middle, that's good for all the different companies, good for the city, and good for the citizens of our city. Anything from you, sir? No. Ma'am? Staff?
Just our typical monthly report on the administrative installation of yield and some parking restrictions. That's at the tail end of your report. Other than that, nothing else to report.
All right. There's no other business. I'll take a motion to adjourn. We have a motion from Commissioner Littlefield. Second. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, one moment. Oh, yes, you have something else.
How does the agenda look for next month? We talked about taking a month off.
Well, I think we were thinking of taking July off. I think August is a traditional, but what do we have for August?
I know that next month there'll be a presentation by the Public Works Department on the 5-year capital improvement plan. That's, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, usually it would be a June, July thing if we could, but we need to press on. Any other questions or comments? I'm sorry. All right, so we have a motion to adjourn from somebody, please.
So moved.
We have a motion from Commissioner Witcher, seconded by Commissioner Littlefield. Votes, please. All right. Okay, we're out.